This is Bloomberg Markets. I'm Kaylee Lyons. Well, U.S. RV shipments posted a record in November, up 15.6% compared to a year ago, as people look for ways to travel without staying in motels or riding in airplanes. For now, the industry seems to be steering around supply chain shortages, labor problems, and inflation. But what does the picture look like going forward? Joining us now for his perspective is Jason Lippert, Chief Executive of LCI Industries, the largest part supplier to the RV industry. Jason, we know that everybody was interested in alternate travel at the start of the pandemic, and as a result, you saw a lot of demand for RVs and campers. Is that now starting to wane now that we're in the pandemic's later stages?
No, inventories are down at the dealers. We're going to have a record year this year, looking to extend on that record next year, largely because we can't fill demand because of supply chain problems. So, about 72 million Americans are projected to camp next year, which will be a record off of, I think, 58 million this past year and 46 the year before. So
we'll get to the supply side issues in just a moment. But while we're talking about demand specifically, have you seen it pick up at all in the last month or so, given the new threat of the Omicron variant?
So, yeah, retail's stayed strong. I think it's too early to, say how the Omicron variant's going to impact RV sales. But I think we've seen all along COVID, stemming from the beginning, that every time COVID kind of rears its ugly head, people jump back in, the RV demand cycle, and we get more demand for the products.
All right, so let's now talk about how able you are to meet that demand. How are the supply side challenges for you? Have you been able to get everything you need in order to supply these RV makers?
Yeah, freight's been a huge issue from Asia. We've had the same supply constraints that every other company in the country's had. But at the end of the day, our industry's been really resilient. We've found substitutions. We've all diversified our supply chains, and that's allowed us to get to a 45%, growth this year over last year, which was almost a record year.
Well, how have you diversified the supply chain? What steps have you taken? Have you brought things closer to shore?
Yeah, we brought some stuff, some of our products back into the U.S. We've gotten 2 or 3 suppliers more than what we had offshore from some of our components that we buy overseas. We've gone to other countries. We found other suppliers that are willing to make parts for us here in the U.S. So, we've tried every strategy we can, and it's resulted for us for Lippert in about a 56% increase on sales, or $1.4 billion improvement over last year.
And where have the bottlenecks been the most challenging?
A lot of components not in our end of the world. Silicon, wood, those have been issues. Glue's been a big issue. Obviously, chip shortages impact a little bit of our industry with motorhomes. But with respect to our core components, we haven't had the kind of issues that we've seen with some of the other industry peers.
Well, obviously, all of these supply side challenges have driven to higher inflation. It seems like almost everything is more expensive. How has your pricing had to adapt?
So, I think the fact that there's, maybe 40% new buyers into RVs, they don't know, I think, necessarily what to expect on the pricing. A lot of our market's built on that $20,000 to $30,000 travel trailer. So you're talking about a $200 to $350 payment in some cases, and most people can stomach that, especially given the fact that Americans have almost $3 trillion more in their bank accounts, this year, compared to pre-COVID. So that's a lot of extra money sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, those savings accounts are definitely quite padded. Thank you very much to fiscal stimulus. Is it mostly, though, people looking to buy an RV, or is this a primary rental market? How has that actually shaken out?
Well, that's been one of the great disruptors and, new things to our industry. Is Outdoorsy is a good example. They came on the scene a couple of years ago, right before COVID, and I think they have over $1.5 billion in bookings. They say they post over 377 million miles in terms of miles logged by their renters. And prior to COVID, there just wasn't a good rental platform. So it's giving Americans and their families all sorts of opportunities to rent RVs where prior that wasn't really an option. So it gets people into the lifestyle.
And finally, something else the pandemic has highlighted has been a push toward ESG and kind of more environmental goals. What does the future of the RV industry look like to you when you think about, decarbonization and the green transition?
Yeah, well, you're going to see, a lot of electric vehicles. Our industry is talking a lot about that right now. 90% of the vehicles in the the U.S. RV market are towables. So they're being pulled by vehicles, but we're trying to come up with some solutions that allow for renewable energy and sustainable energy. There's a lot of boondocking going on right now, so there's lots of options for RVs to be able to go off grid, and you can camp without hooking up to traditional shore power and sewer and things like that.
Off grid while going off the grid. Thank you so much to Jason Lippert, Chief Executive of LCI Industries, for talking all things RV with us. Happy holidays to you. And coming up here, we're going to talk about